Toy Chica has been popular among many Five Nights at Freddy's fans ever since she first debuted in 2015. With her curvy design and later implemented yandere personality,
let's go somewhere more private, so I can eat you.
It's plainly obvious to see why. Before Roxanne Wolf showed up, she was one of my favorites, behind the Rotten Rabbit Springtrap. What gets to me is how this cute chick is popular for all the wrong reasons. She was never intended to be the beloved bird who brought in those who love adorable characters with a dangerous edge. Believe it or not, she was made as a joke that none of us ever really caught on to. To describe how Toy Chica looks, by default she has the appearance of a typical cutesy or feminine cartoon character. She's got the big shiny eyes, hourglass figure with a pronounced waist and chest, and bright cartoony colors to really make her pop. These colors include a mostly yellow body, orange feet and beak, pink cheeks, and a pink midsection area that's either supposed to look like a yoga bottom or swimsuit piece. However, there's a different side of Toy Chica that comes out when Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is closed, and the physical change she goes through shows it. Gone are her big shiny eyes and beak, allowing her endoskeleton to show through. Toy Chica is the only one of the toy animatronics to go through this in-depth of a transformation. The closest one to her is Toy Freddy, who will black out his eyes when entering your office. This was most likely done to make her look more intimidating, but it also represents how something far more dangerous is lurking behind the innocent looking facade of these toys. Of course, I will mention how some like Toy Chica without her beak better, but I've always found this version of her to be chilling. I will never forget when I first played Five Nights at Freddy's 2 and spotted her on the camera by the bathroom. The way she looked as she just stared into the camera was so creepy to me. Toy Chica debuted in 2015 with the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 game. Here she was the opposite of Chica, who appeared in the first Five Nights at Freddy's, at least in terms of appearance. Gameplay wise, she was relatively the same, except she appeared in the left side air vent after making her way to it instead of the right doorway that Chica stopped at before attacking the player. I've always enjoyed having Toy Chica going after me in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 and its remake and Help Wanted. Not because I imagined her tackling me like some fans do, but because I found her to be one of the creepiest, if not the creepiest, relentless animatronic in the whole game. Toy Chica didn't have a voice in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, making her silently stalk you even more nerve-wracking. This is why I love Toy Chica. She was the most adorable looking animatronic turned nightmarish stalker who was relentless in tracking you down. Besides Mangle, she was clearly one of the most imaginative animatronics Scott Cawthon came up with. To ward off Toy Chica, you simply put on your mask when you see her in the vent. After a brief animation, she'll go away like most animatronics in that game. This has caused some to incorrectly assume that the toy animatronics are dumb. Well, maybe in Toy Bonnie's case that's true.
6, 7, 5, 3, 4, 2, 1.
However, I see this more as how the toy animatronics are programmed as robots. That's one of the things I love about Five Nights at Freddy's 2, how we're just going up against regular animatronics, with the toys anyways. Now there's a rather silly mystery going on with Toy Chica, and that is how exactly her beak works. This mystery is one of the biggest reasons why most still talk about her, besides, well, you know. Toy Chica's beak is almost paradoxical in terms of how it functions, because it technically shouldn't. When we look at Toy Chica without her beak, we can see her metal endoskeleton behind her mouth inside her head. Yet at least in the second movie, it's clearly fully functional despite having the same problem of easily falling off. You would just assume the beak has a simple mechanism that connects to the mouth of the endoskeleton. However, a mechanism that is simply connected to the mouth would just cause Toy Chica to close her beak every time her endoskeleton opened its mouth. A more complex mechanical beak would require heavier parts, ensuring it would be permanently stuck to her head in some way. The beak could be its own separate animatronic powered by batteries that just connect to her head with a simple latch or peg. However, that would beg the question, why would Toy Chica's beak be a separate animatronic from her? I get why she takes it off, but I just can't understand how it fully works, yet it can easily fall off at the same time. You'd think with how popular Toy Chica became, she'd stick around for a while, but that wasn't the case. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 confirmed that she was indeed dismantled along with the rest of her toy animatronics. In one of the mini-games, Toy Chica is a playable character, which led many to believe the toy animatronics are connected to either the children of the MCI or DCI. Well, unless animatronics can become ghosts, which is highly unlikely, I don't think that's the case. What I think is more likely is that the ghosts of the MCI are haunting the arcade games you're playing, allowing you to glitch through the confines of those games' programming. The toy animatronics we play with in those games are not the same ones that got dismantled. We are just playing with sprites that look like the toy animatronics. The last big appearance in the 2D games was 3 years later in Ultimate Custom Night in 2018. She played the same as in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, but after earning enough enough points, you could unlock the cutscenes of a miniseries called Toy Chica The High School Years. This series depicts Toy Chica continuously going after other animatronics she has a crush on in rather disturbing ways. Some have tried to link this to the timeline and say that Toy Chica is a stand-in for William Afton and what he did. If that's the case, then how does the silly miniseries about Freddy going after Foxy continuously in Japan link to the lore? Toy Chica didn't have another major appearance until Help Wanted and AR Special Delivery. In Help Wanted, she reprised her role in the remake of Five Nights at Freddy's 2 with the same mechanics as before. She also cameoed in the Build a Mangle minigame where you can use her parts to help you build your own mishmash animatronic. Since AR Special Delivery was a capture and collect game, of course one of the most popular animatronics would appear in it. She had 2 skins dedicated just to her, but I can't really comment much on this since I didn't really play it much. I am concerned about why high score is displayed across her chest and think the Katrina Toy Chica skin looks amazing. I seem to have forgotten about FNAF World, where she didn't really have a major role but was one of the starter animatronics. Toy Chica is awesome in this game. She's a healer, but she can also increase attack power and insta-kill enemies under 30% health. Toy Chica is kind of a broken character once you level her up enough and use the right strategy. Since the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie was, well, an adaptation of the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 game, Toy Chica was expected to make her big screen debut. What I wasn't expecting was her to be the main animatronic of the movie. I swear she got more screen time than Charlotte and the Marionette combined. I think it was because Megan Fox voiced her, which pushed Toy Chica to become the major focus, and with how popular both of them are, I don't think too many people minded. I'm not a big fan of Megan Fox, nothing against her, she's just not on my list of favorite actresses, but even I was blown away at how good of a job she did voicing our beloved bird. She did give Toy Chica a more typical feminine robot voice than her yandere personality one, but since Toy Chica was under the control of the Marionette, I can let that slide. Toy Chica was fun to watch in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and I was always anticipating what she was gonna do next. It made me sad to see her go at the end of the movie and know that she won't be coming back in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. A huge problem I did have when it came to Toy Chica's portrayal in the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie was how her security mode only had one appearance in the whole thing. The scene didn't even have her attacking anyone while she was in it. I don't even think it was her security mode in the movie. It was just used as a gag to show some of her parts falling off of her despite being in great condition for her age, which never got brought up again for the rest of the movie. Beakless Toy Chica is my favorite form of hers because of how creepy she looks, and I was so disappointed with how it practically never showed up despite Toy Chica being the focus. When I first saw this movie, I thought Toy Chica losing her parts in the cab and she and Abby showing up to the science fair was building up to her confronting Mr. Berg in her security mode as the payoff. How do you miss an opportunity like that? It feels like the filmmakers forgot that Toy Chica had her security mode, so they quickly threw in the cameo cab gag to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and check it off the list. I really wish we had at least one more scene with Toy Chica in her security mode that was put to good use. There could have been a scene where Mike, when he was all alone at the other Freddy's location, spotted Toy Chica in the hallway, a reference to what she did in the games. Toy Chica could have been backlit so you couldn't see her front, but Mike's expression could show he still knew something was off. 2 pinprick lights would have been where her eyes should have been as she slowly walked towards Mike. As she got closer, she would have scolded Mike about not being a very good big brother to Abby. We could have even seen some of her yandere personality here, as she could have teased Mike about the 2 of them having the place all to themselves, or suggested going somewhere more private, like an ultimate custom night. Right as she approached Mike, the office light could have revealed Toy Chica in her security mode. Toy Chica could have then bent towards Mike really quickly while trying to grab him, making it look like her jump scare from the game, and maybe even playing the game's animatronic jump scare sound. Right before Toy Chica grabbed Mike, he could have shoved the Freddy mask in front of his face, causing Toy Chica to become confused, as if he had disappeared right in front of her. There could have even been a reference to the Silver Eyes trilogy where Toy Chica lifted one side of one of the tables or the computer desk while asking Mike where he went. You could argue that since the marionette was hiding inside Toy Chica, the mask wouldn't have worked, but it still would have been a great part of the movie. This leads into another problem I had, not just with Toy Chica, not just with the other animatronics, but with the movies themselves, and it's the lack of CGI. I know that the Five Nights at Freddy's movies pride themselves on almost always using practical effects, props, and costumes, but animating the animatronics with CGI models in some scenes would have solved a lot of problems they had when it came to filming those characters. I appreciate that the prop team made actual animatronics that were really there for the actors to work with when they were on screen. However, there was no excuse for Toy Chica and the rest of the animatronics not being CGI CGI animated in some complex scenes. The guy who started this franchise is a CGI modeler and animator. The current studio working on the games knows how to animate the highly detailed animatronics in cutscenes. Green screening the CGI animated animatronics into the movies wouldn't have cost much or required much effort. Look, I got Toy Chica to cameo in my own video, and all it took was recording her CGI model in an idle animation on a green screen in Gary's mod. I can't stress enough that I like the movies and the portrayal of the animatronics in them as they are. It's just so bizarre how the movies go so far out of their way to not use CGI that it hurts the filmmakers and costs them more as a result. By using CGI, the prop team wouldn't need to make a separate beakless, eyeless Toy Chica just for one scene. Yeah, it would have been more difficult for the actors to pretend that something's there and play off thin air, but that's what acting's all about, baby! If Toy Chica was popular enough to have a leading role in the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie, then you better believe there's a ton of merchandise with her face on it. Merchandising, where the real money from the games and movies are made. You got Toy Chica the plushie, Toy Chica the race car, Toy Chica the action figure, Toy Chica the cop, Toy Chica the hat, and Toy Chica the cardboard cutout. That one's a real hit with the kids. There's way more Toy Chica merch than that, but I'd literally be here all day if I talked about every single one. Now, I was planning on including a segment where I reviewed the Jazzwares Toy Chica figure with jump scare action, but I'm starting to believe Jazzwares don't sell their toys in Canada. Either that or the scalping situation is so out of control, it'd be cheaper for me to build my own Toy Chica than to buy a toy of her. I've tried websites that force secondhand sellers to offer their goods at a reasonable price, but they don't do business in Canada. So yeah, I was out of luck trying to get my own Toy Chica figure. Instead, I'll talk about the history of Toy Chica's action figures. The very first Toy Chica action figure was a high score Toy Chica by Funko in 2022. It's weird how Funko had the mold for Toy Chica ready to go but never released a standard Toy Chica figure. The next Toy Chica figure did not come out until 3 years later in 2025 with Jazzwares Jump Scare Action Toy Chica. Kinda sounds like Kung Fu action to me, and I believe this was released around the same time as the Toy Chica figure you could get with the specific popcorn bucket at theaters when the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie released. The year after that, in 2026, we got the Endo series Toy Chica, who strangely enough came with her high score shell for optional customization. It's almost as if Jazzwares received all the documents and molds from Funko once the toy deal switched over to them, and they fixed the high score Toy Chica mold they had into something we all actually wanted. I'm certain that more Toy Chica figures are definitely on the way, like maybe a jumbo version similar to what Funko did for Freddy and Bonnie. It'd be cool if you could take her beak and eyes off. Since I've talked about Toy Chica's action figures, let's talk about and compare each version of her that appeared in every game and the movie, and see what I personally think of them. To this day, I still think Toy Chica's model from her first appearance in the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 game is peak. It's beautifully modeled, which is something high-definition 2D games that render 3D models into sprites will always have over fully 3D games. Now, the lighting and ray tracing that's pre-rendered into the images and sprites is doing most of the heavy lifting, but, and I'm going to say it, almost all of these shots with her model are absolutely gorgeous. I still think Scott's lighting and model work holds up to this day. The next time her model appeared in Ultimate Custom Night, while I know it's the same model from Five Nights at Freddy's 2, for some reason looks downgraded to me. By this point, Scott Cawthon knew how to take full advantage of the Click Team Fusion engine and pack as much into it as possible. While I commend him for it, it came at the cost of his sprites and images quality. Toy Chica looks softer and blurrier, and you can see the compression in her shading. Her animations are also stiffer, although that can be said for nearly every animatronic in Ultimate Custom Night. While it is a downgrade, she still doesn't look that bad, especially if you consider all the other enemies that were rendered into this game. Now, when you look at Toy Chica's model from Help Wanted up close, it doesn't look very impressive at first. However, this must have been from a render in an area where lighting effects were turned off. When you put this model in an environment with proper lighting, it looks almost as good as her render from the 2D Five Nights at Freddy's game. The only reason it doesn't look just as good is that a game fully rendering 3D models in real time requires more hardware to run. To make sure all the 3D models could render on as much modern gaming hardware as possible, Steel Wool's versions had to be toned down a bit. Still, for what they had to work with, Help Wanted Toy Chica as a runner-up next to her 2D rendered counterpart. Talking about Toy Chica's renders and AR special delivery is kinda complicated because she had multiple skins, so I will be including them. First up, we have her vanilla skin, which surprisingly actually looks better than her 2D render in Five Nights at Freddy's 2. I have no idea why there are scuffs and dirt on it, it, other than that the modelers wanted to show off how much detail they could add to it. Those details make her look a little aged, when that wouldn't make sense since her original was dismantled long before this game took place. Unless I'm mistaken, the animatronics that go after you are newly manufactured copies. Her vanilla model still looks amazing and is probably the best rendered version of her. Her high score skin is what her blue recolors of her action figures are based on. Unlike her action figure, this skin has a lot of animated details. This is really cool. I like how futuristic but at the same time retro looking it is. Still kinda concerned about the high score is labeled across her chest. Her game over skin is more or less just a recolor of the high score skin with a slightly different animation. Still looks really cool, and I think it's more appropriate that game over is sprawled across her chest, since it would be game over if you got close enough to Toy Chica to read what's on her bib. The modelers must have been working overtime to create the Katrina skin, because this is an amazing homage to who she was based on. This was more than likely a super rare or expensive skin for players to get their hands on. Again, I don't know because I didn't really play this game. As a guy who loves Spanish holidays, especially the Day of the Dead, I am in love with this skin. The details are simply stunning, and it looks like she is wearing makeup on some parts of her. A fantastic skin. Her time traveler skin, on the other hand, I'm not such a big fan of. It's a cute skin and looks more Indiana Jonesy, but it just looks more plain, especially when compared to her Katrina skin. She doesn't look all that much like a time traveler, more like an animatronic who should be exploring ancient ruins. This skin should have been named Temple Explorer Toy Chica instead. All of Toy Chica's props made for the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie are unbelievably one-to-one with the render from the original game. She has little scuffs and marks added to her, like in Help Wanted and AR Special Delivery, but at least she has the excuse that she was around for decades in the film. As upset as I got about the lack of beakless Toy Chica, at least her prop for that version was stunningly well done. I can't really say anything negative about Toy Chica's appearance in the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie, especially with how they made the beak fully functional. They could have just kept her beak completely still while she talked so it would be easier to take off for the cab scene and make fewer props, but they went the extra distance. Bravo! They were even brave enough to have a version of her that had the marionette burst out of her chest. The great job they did on her is why I'm sad she's not gonna make a comeback in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. So let's address the curvy chick-shaped elephant in the room, and that is why Toy Chica was created in the first place. Back in 2014, when the first Five Nights at Freddy's game came out and became unexpectedly popular, the internet noticed the animatronic characters. Some of the earliest fans did their thing and made interesting fan art of them. This was especially the case with Chica, to the point that it even got the attention of more popular YouTubers.
That duck is smart, and apparently to the internet that duck is very sexy to some people.
It also got the attention of Scott Cawthon, who probably made the best response to all of that. I swear I saw or heard this somewhere in an interview with Scott Cawthon before, but I can't find the quote anywhere. Otherwise, I would have included it here. Toy Chica was made in a response to all the saucy fan art Chica was getting back when Five Nights at Freddy's first released. Yeah, Toy Chica was most likely made as a joke on the whole Five Nights at Freddy's community. The longest running joke on the fandom. Scott Cawthon took all the fan art we made of Chica, turned it into an animatronic, then had that animatronic go mask off and hunt us down while looking horrifying. Toy Chica is a Venus flytrap, a monster who appears irresistibly alluring only to reveal its horrible intentions once it's too late and you're snared in the trap. It's a genius way to make an animatronic, and there are so many layers to the way she works. Sadly, she didn't get a whole lot of focus in the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 game, which is why I am glad that she got a lot more focus in the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie. While some enjoy Toy Chica for her looks, she's one of my favorites because of how creatively horrifying her concept is. For those of you who made it this far, congratulations! You all get rewarded with a fun dice game. All you need to play this game is a 6-sided dice, and it's about what it would be like if you, yes you, encountered Toy Chica and what would go down. Let's start by rolling the dice and see what time of day it is when you encounter Toy Chica. If it's an odd number, you encounter Toy Chica during the night. If it's an even number, you encounter her during the day. If you landed on an odd number, you can move on to event 2. If you landed on an even number, you can skip event 2 and move on to event 3. Event 2, oh no, you've encountered Toy Chica at night. Roll the dice to find out what mode she's in. If it's an even number, she's in her friendly stage mode with her eyes and beak. What a relief. If it's an odd number, oh no, she's in her beakless security mode. If you you rolled an even number, you can move on to event 3. If you rolled an odd number, skip event 3 right to event 4. Event 3, what is Toy Chica getting ready for when you encounter her? Roll the dice. If it's a 1, she's getting ready for a birthday party. 2, she's getting ready to perform on stage with her animatronic friends. 3, you booked a day with her at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and she's greeting you ahead of time. 4, she has the day off because there are no parties and you just happen to have caught her eye. 5, she was on her way to investigate a weird noise and asked you to join. 6, some prankster put a heavy object on top of the puppet's box and she asks you to help her. Event 4, Toy Chica engages you while in her security mode. How does she engage? Roll the dice. If it's a 1, she attacks, leaping straight towards you. 2, she picks you up and starts carrying you towards the exit. 3, before either of you can do anything, the rest of the toy animatronics show up. 4, before any of you can do anything, the withered animatronics show up. 5, you put on the Freddy mask before anything happens, making her believe you are an animatronic. 6, somebody else breaks in, causing her to go after the criminal instead of you. If you were on event 3, move on to event 5. If you're on event 4, skip event 5 to event 6. Event 5, what happens during your interaction with Toy Chica during the day or while she's in stage mode? If you roll a 1, she gives you a quick peck on the side of your face, almost knocking you over since she doesn't know her own strength. 2, what both of you are doing goes horribly wrong to the point it breaks Toy Chica, but she's still functional. 3, what you both do goes so wrong that it ends up completely breaking down Toy Chica. 4, Toy Freddy and Toy Bonnie join in on what's going down. 5, one of the owners of the pizzeria shows up, a real shifty looking guy, and suddenly Toy Chica isn't acting like herself. 6, Toy Chica completely malfunctions, lodging her beak as hard as she can into your head. You become the latest bite victim. Game over. If you didn't roll a 6 on event 5, proceed to the final event. If you're dealing with Toy Chica in her security mode, here's event 6. What happens while you're taking on Toy Chica in her security mode? If you roll a 1, you die from your attack. Game over. 2, the puppet shows up, shutting down Toy Chica and allowing you to escape safely. 3, the puppet shows up and attacks you too, since you forgot to wind up his music box. 4, a dangerous man in a bulky yellow rabbit costume shows up. Now you have to deal with him and Toy Chica. 5, it turns over to 6 a.m. and Toy Chica along with the other animatronics return to their normal selves in the show stage. 6, unexpectedly, Toy Chica starts dancing, all while holding a top hat and cane that she got from somewhere. If you haven't died to Toy Chica yet, here's the final event. How does your day or night with Toy Chica end? If you roll a 1, surprise, everything was leading up to a party Toy Chica planned just for you. 2, you managed to sneak Toy Chica out of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza all the way back home. I'm sure Fazbear Entertainment won't notice their most popular giant chicken missing and that there won't be any problems after midnight. 3, all of the toy animatronics including the puppet join Toy Chica in clobbering you before throwing you out of the building. 4, all of the withered animatronics join Toy Chica in clobbering you before stuffing you inside a spare animatronic suit. 5, Toy Chica gives you a big hug before you leave. How sweet. 6, Toy Chica starts acting really possessive and clingy. It's weirding you out. You get out of there as fast as you can when she starts making threats about how you'll never leave her. Well, that was my deep dive on Toy Chica. I hope I provided enough to cover at least all the important bases and that you had fun while watching or listening to this. If you played the Toy Chica dice game, how did you fare? Most importantly, thank you for making it this far because that makes you my shining star. See you later.